Let me warmly welcome the panelists today. Mr. Shahid Sattar, Executive Director for APTIMA. Mr. Shaukat Hamid Khan, Senior Fellow at PIDE. And Lieutenant General Shahid Niaz, the Member Advisory Board on PIDE. So, in terms of opening remarks, this is an incredibly important topic. Why I say that is the investment to GDP numbers in Pakistan at 15% has remained stagnant for the last 20 years. Half of that comes from public sector, but the remaining comes from the private sector, which also has remained stagnant. So how do you make the public sector investment more efficient? That's the focus of the morning and the afternoon conversation, including this one. And there are many challenges that Pakistan faces. So today the panelists will explore both from how to make project implementation more effective to overcome all the weaknesses, including cost overruns, to how do you use projects to be able to create more jobs. So let me first invite Mr. Shahid Niaz. You're going to go first. Lieutenant General Shahid Niaz. He's going to come first. He will make a presentation for about 15 minutes. At the end of 12 minutes, I'll remind him that he has 3 more minutes. And then we'll move on to the next presentation for about 10-15 minutes. And then we will have remarks from Mr. Shahid Sattar, and then I will open it up for feedback, observations, and questions from the audience. So with that, let me invite you, sir, for the opening presentation.
With your permission, I want to express my gratitude to PIDE and in particular to Dr. Nadeem for providing me this opportunity to share with you my views. I've been a member at the Planning Commission, as member of implementation, and that was a good opportunity to have an insight into the implementation process. Besides that, I have some experience of construction as a junior executive, and then as an employer also, representing the Army, Air Force and Navy for all the construction that goes on as the engineer-in-chief. And I have also served on the other side of the fence. That means as a contractor. I am the Director General of Frontier Works Organization. So my discourse basically would confine to the project implementation and the problems that we have associated with it. To start with, the stages of project cycle are well defined, documented and understood by all. That is the identification and preparation, appraisal and approval, implementation, completion and evaluation. The problem arises whenever deviations are made from the laid down procedures which have since matured over a period of time. They are fully backed by various directives or the ACNEC issued from time to time and the policy decision taken by the Planning Commission. All these procedures and processes have been well formulated and documented in the project management manual issued by the Planning Commission. I recollect while I was here, we had a lot of discussion, and Dr. Nadeem would always say that there's something wrong with our system. Why these projects go into revision? Why they go into cost overruns? And I always said, sir, we are not following the system. The system is very good, provided we abide by all the parameters that it lays. Now, what are the resultant implications due to non-adherence to procedures? First is the establishment of necessity of a project or program in line with the sectoral priority of the government. There is a defined system to get a project approved first, whether it is required or not, but this seldom happens. Feasibility studies, they are not conducted in majority of the projects, though a provision of PC2 exists for which necessary funding is always available in the PSDP. The executing agencies, departments, they lack in-house technical expertise, except for big organizations like water, NHA, and few other departments. All rest have no in-house technical expertise. So what happens at that stage, because they're preparing the PC ones, they are always faulty. They are much short of what the actual requirement is. Then the process of appraisal and scrutiny of PC1 at the Planning Commission is rushed through for various reasons. Political expediency, and then there's a time limit laid down by the ACNIC, which is about 6 to 8 weeks for a PC1 to come here, get scrutinized, and that doesn't mean it gets approved. It has to go to and fro, and then it gets approved. But this doesn't happen. I have attended several CDW meetings and we get a slip here. This is a project which is to be included. This is a directive from the top. So we used to include them. So the time of appraisal and approval allowed is normally not adhered to. Now projects requiring acquisition of lands is usually initiated after approval of projects. This is a big drag, a big bottleneck. You understand the process of acquisition of land. Though a provision already exists, this has been taken care of by the Planning Commission for preparing a separate PC1 for this purpose, but it's seldom followed. The process of procurement of works, pre-qualification of contractors, operators and awards suffers due to non-availability of requisite technical resource with the department. As I said, they don't have the in-house capability. So it is left to the consultants. And consultants have a field day. And I must quote a very renowned engineer, all of you must know him, Shamsul Mulk, the ex-chairman Waqda. We were on an inquiry together, and he said the performance of the consultants is directly dependent upon the capacity of the department and the capability of the department to get work out of them. And this is so true. Next is the non-implementation of standard bidding documents of the Pakistan Engineering Council, which is harmonized with the PIDE system of contracts for award of contracts by some departments, although there are standing instructions by the ACNIC and Planning Commission, and they went to an extent where they said, we'll not release the funds if you're not following this format. But some of the department, even federal departments, still don't use this format, and they end up into various difficulties, which are contractual, legal, and they create financial implications. So this is one area which needs to be addressed and made effective. Then is the non-realistic financial phasing and release of funds that is not as per the requirement, which creates problems. Like we have the 20%, 20%, 30%, and 30% for a quarter. There are projects which require a little more, but you are bound by that system. And there are other projects which are not performing, where you could cut down, slash it, and give it to project which is progressing, but it doesn't happen. Then monitoring by the project cells of ministries and divisions for their own projects and projects being executed under them is not effectively conducted. I'm told about out of 44 ministries and divisions that we have, just 19 divisions have their project cells. Remaining are functioning without these. Then is frequent changes in scope of work, which is beyond the 15% limit laid down by the PC1. This has to be, if it is there's an increase, this has to be referred back to the approving authority, whether it is CDWB or the ACNIC. It never happens. They just keep adding to the cost and bring it at a time once the cost is doubled. This adds to time and cost overrun. This is one of the main contributing factors. Then the capacity and capability of consultants in the country requires. This point was raised by one of the speakers today, and I fully subscribe. Project wing of the Planning Commission. I headed this wing. This is responsible for third-party validation and monitoring. Due to its very limited capacity, the size, it is unable to handle the magnitude of the workload. They can do at best in a year about not more than 25 to 30% of the monitoring. The mere fact that this outfit is still working as a project, it has not been regularized. Since my time, that was in 2010 to 13, there were efforts being made to have a permanent setup, but it is still a project. So people have no security, they have no job security, there's no continuity. So this is very important that if you want this setup to function, it must be regularized and made into a permanent step. Now I come to other spheres which affect the projects. The process of audit, though, is a constitutional requirement. Wherever public funds are spent, but lack of understanding by the audit staff of the dynamics of projects results in formulating unrealistic audit reports which have its obvious obligations. In case of foreign aided projects, the donor agencies do exercise their checks during execution. However, my experience is these are event-based and interventions are made to check milestones, and ultimately the responsibility still remains with the executing authority. Non-submission of PC4 by the department leads to prolongation and increase in costs, and facilities thus cannot shift to the current budget of which they can be put to use. As per the record, about projects completed in a year, not more than about 10% PC4s are prepared or submitted. And then is the next stage, which is the evaluation, PC5. It cannot be conducted unless you have completed the PC4. Hence, the objectives and the direct or indirect benefits cannot be ascertained. These which were highlighted in the PC1, and the sponsors make this as a point to get the projects approved, that this is the benefit, this is going to accrue. If you can't measure them, what's the fun? Last but not the least is the process of decision making. Under the prevailing circumstances, this has now taken a back seat for reasons well known. Nobody is prepared to take a decision. So there are delays, financial effects, cost overruns. I would term it as the foremost factor which is hurting the projects back. If you have put a person in authority, let him exercise that authority. Trust him. And if there's some mistake, if there's some error or lapse, it should be taken as such and not an element of corruption or something. This has badly affected every project all over the country. We talked about the result-based monitoring or management. The power of measuring results. If you do not measure results, you cannot tell success from failure. If you cannot see success, you cannot reward it. If you cannot reward success, you are probably rewarding failure. If you cannot see success, you cannot learn from it. And if you cannot recognize failure, you cannot correct it. If you can demonstrate results, you can win public support. Here I end with the first part of my presentation, and I had planned a case study. Dr. Nadeem said I should go ahead with that, and I'll present a case study on the new international airport. This was an inquiry that I was interested while I was in the Planning Commission, and it was a very difficult exercise. And the good thing is that it withstood the test of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. Somebody gave a petition and it went to the Supreme Court, and the recommendations or the observations that I have given could never be challenged even by the foreign consultants or the contractors. Please, next. This is finally what has come out. Now, it dates back to 1982. The UNDP hired Messrs. Bechtel for Civil Aviation Authority to prepare a strategy for airport infrastructure development all over the country. They further hired Airport de Paris. This was a French and a German firm for assistance. Concept feasibility study was first carried out by Bechtel International Airports, and they set the priority. First was Islamabad, followed by Karachi, Lahore, and Peshawar. And their ultimate recommendation was that Karachi should be taken up first, and it was completed. It had few problems, but completed in time with few cost overruns. The priority of Islamabad was changed to Lahore, and it was completed in 1992. And it had cost overruns, but ultimately got through. And this Islamabad was taken up last. Now, the first feasibility for this project was conducted by ADPI and NASPA. This was to ascertain whether the existing airport at Chaklala, which is now the Noor Khan Air Base, whether to expand it or take it to a new location. And their feasibility suggested that they had to go to the new location, which is now where it is housed. The procurement of land started in 1986, and it took 22 years for procurement of land. There was a separate PC1. You could imagine the delays. Then in the year 2006, second feasibility with master plan by Messrs. Louis Berger Group and ECIL, which is a Pakistani consultancy firm, was prepared. In February 2007, CA was in a hurry, so they started with the earthwork as a package, 0-0 under a separate PC. And then these consultants were selected, they shown there. The PMG was PMC, Project Management Consultant, was Louis Berger, Design Consultant, PTV, CPG from Singapore, and Design Consultants for remaining ADPI. Now, the feasibility gave a short-term plan, which was, since it was starting in 2007 and it was scheduled to complete in 11, there was one main runway, a parallel taxiway track with two link track for cargo and maintenance hangars to exist. Next plan, which was to start in 2011 to 12 to 2021, three rapid exits and additional northeastern taxi track had to be added. And ultimately, another second runway was to be added in the year 35 to 36 with 6 rapid exits, etc. Because this project or this airport is designed for the heaviest aircraft, sorry, which is A380. So they wanted, for simultaneously operations, they needed another runway, which was to be constructed in the year 35, 36. Next, sorry. Now, look at this irony, that civil aviation went ahead in the year 2006 with construction of the final plan, which was to be done in the year 35, 36. They constructed a main runway with 3 rapid exits and 3 linked with a secondary runway. The taxiway, some bright fellow like me, he suggested that the taxiway should be converted, why not, into an emergency runway. So this was adopted. Another young, much brighter person came up and he said, if you're spending so much money, why not have a full-fledged secondary runway? Now for A38, for simultaneously operations, there is a distance of about 943, about a kilometer apart. These two runways are just 243 meters apart. Now what happens? You may not have noticed, since there are no links, you go all the way to the end, and then your aircraft takes a turn. And mind you, this can't be used as a taxiway, because the lighting system for a runway and a taxiway is different. So they have to close down one runway and use the other one. Not only this, I just give you the conclusions. This had been beset from inception to its completion stage due to inappropriate planning and inefficient implementation strategy. There was a very efficient department, some of you might be familiar, which was known as the Airport Development Authority. It did a good job. It was independent under the Ministry of Defense, and it constructed many secondary small airports, and even outside in the Middle East. This was wound up in the year, for what good reasons, 1991. And its 3 directorates came directly under the civil aviation. This was an engineering setup headed by an engineer who knew what was to be done. So this was now civil aviation's own in-house, everything. The lack of clear-cut vision and roadmap leading to inaccurate assessment, analysis, these was presented to the Civil Aviation Board for decision making. Oh God, I'm going from. Now, sir. Okay, sir. Both feasibility studies missed out certain essential details. CAA also overlooked these details. The original PC1 therefore prepared was deficient. The project management consultants and CAA were equally responsible. The original PC1 was for a cost of 37 billion with this one runway and taxiways, etc., including all infrastructure. From 1986 to 20, we talked about the land. Just see, average cost was 277,000 per acre, 22 times higher than the feasibility study of 1984. 86 it started because of prolongation and delay. It led to cost escalation, affected planning and execution. Poor planning and BMC and lack of correct assessment of civil. Now what has happened? You have made another runway there, which is of no use. Now for future operations, because you had to procure land now, otherwise there are societies coming up. So they had to get 1,500 acres of additional land for a runway to be built up for simultaneous operation in the future at a cost of 12 lakh rupees per canal. And then we say the cost has escalated to 70%. These are the reasons. Now, another biggest flaw that this project went through, the project management consultant, Louis Burnett, suggested that for such projects, you can have one contract, or at best 2. One the land side, the other the air side, means runways, etc., and this side is the terminal buildings and allied facilities. Some bright mind there, he said we have to do it hurriedly. It was split into 17 packages. Subsequently, it went up to about 22 packages. And now you can imagine, somebody is putting a pipeline, somebody is making a drain, and there were hold-ups, there were claims of the contractors, work stalled, it got delayed. Now come to this. As per the assessment, this airport at Chaklala at that time, in 2006, sir, just 2-3 minutes more, it was catering for about 3 million passengers every year. They said it will escalate to in 2020 to 6.5. So we should have constructed the terminal building for that strength. It was planned and built for 9 million passengers per year, which was meant for 35. So you see the areas lying vacant, you are paying for the energy cost, you are paying for the maintenance cost, and who's responsible? Conversion of parallel taxiway, I have already, this has cost them 3.4 billion at that time, and now what will be the effect? Then provision of lighting system, I have already said, distance of 30 meters instead of 70 meters between the two runways, and further generation of requirement of third runway, which would cost about 8 to 10 billion in the future. And then frequent changes of PIDE, etc. These were minor issues. That's all, sir.
Thank you very much for your two-part presentation. First, you analyze the weaknesses in project implementation, bringing out everything from non-adherence to procedures, to lack of project directors, to variations being in excess of 15%. And then you illustrated that through the challenges the new Islamabad International Airport faced during its planning construction. So let's now move on to the next presentation. It will be Mr. Shaukat Hamid Khan, who will talk about how through projects more employment can be created.
Thank you very much, sir. There is everything seems to have been said already this morning. There's not much left. So I changed a couple of slides in the interval, and I hope it makes sense now. But thank you very much for asking me to be here. And I'd like to make a correction. Everybody who works in the Planning Commission is not an economist. So everybody who works in the Atomic Energy Commission is not a nuclear physicist. So I was introduced as a nuclear physicist somewhere. I'm not a nuclear physicist, but I did work in the atomic energy for about 30 years. And just take you back a bit. The Atomic Energy Commission was an umbrella organization. Suparco started here. We had a space agency, agriculture, medicine. Everything was done here until institutions became very big, and then they were split up. Suparco grew out of the Atomic Energy Commission. Agriculture, as one example. And we talked about the productivity and so on. The first major spurt in agriculture through cotton, because we have a cotton economy or cottonomics, is that the new NIAB seeds, cotton seeds that came out in 78, 80, series of them. And from 3 million bales, we touched 15, 16 million bales per year. We've gone down to 9, and nobody wants to talk about it. And I'll tell you what the facts are. BG cotton, provided by Monsanto to India, didn't meet the requirements, wasn't resistant to disease and so on, and pests, got smuggled into Pakistan 3 years ago. Somebody just threw it here. And so we see our output has now fallen to 9 million bales, 9.5 million bales a year. Anyway, I looked at the PSDP document on the website. It emphasizes building a knowledge economy on the world technology map, new projects in the field of IT, S&T, education, industry and agriculture during the financial year 1920 to give the desired direction to the economy, special attention to agriculture growth, crop maximization, improvement in livestock, fisheries, efficient irrigation system and improvement of water courses, and CPAC. So these are the priorities, thematic priorities listed in the PSDP document. I'd like to just stop a bit and say, what is the global imperative? And how does it affect the choice of public policy and the formulation of public policy? There is a morphology emerging in the global economy, which distinctive features are, there is a transnational vertical division of labor, diffusion of work, technology and ownership. And it's caused by machines, digital innovations, computerization, and what it requires for a country like Pakistan to play catch-up is generate good quality transnational skills. There's a death of distance now. You don't need to have physical proximity for taking decisions, and also many of the times in industry and so on. Pascal Lamy said about 15 years ago that an irrevocable shift of manufacturing is taking place from the developed to developing countries between the 70s and 90s. Now designing can be undertaken anywhere. And we have not capitalized on this. China has, and the East Asian countries have. Almost all, we talk about the knowledge economy, there's a knowledge task force in Pakistan at the moment, the government. Almost all developed countries can now be identified as knowledge economies to some extent or the other. And they are taking further steps to consolidate this position by becoming even more knowledge intensive and competitive. Even when their productivity has stalled or gone down, slowed down, the rate of increase in the skill bias in technology has not, it has gone up. This is skills for the future based on skills for the present, and how do you plan for that? This is just looking 5 years, 10 years ahead. Other intrinsic factors, of course, classic factors, development of institutional excellence, fast-moving human resources, and strategic alliances for complementary resources. And the last item sometimes involves taking over a country, directly or indirectly. For example, if I had Afghanistan, I'd never let it go. It is the Saudi Arabia of lithium. 50% of the world's lithium is in Afghanistan. And batteries, electric vehicles and so on, everywhere, lithium batteries, that's the way to go. So I like to control the resources. Now, developing countries is another thing, are also witnessing a very sharp reduction in relative demand for unskilled labor since the end of the 70s. In all these emerging economies, public policy and investment has played a major role. They directed the direction, they controlled the direction, or learning by experience, and which way to go. In some newly industrialized Asian countries, East Asia, government policies and activities have led to SMEs. And these SMEs evolved into major global players and conglomerates. These now offer complete end-to-end services in the supply chain, whether it's manufacturer of piece parts and systems, or providers of services, design and research. So this has been the growth pattern in the last 25 years in East Asia. So, and Vietnam is the nearest example for us now, of course fed by input from China. So, yeah. The PSDP budget, 1863 billion is what it says. Provinces 912, federal 951, foreign assistance 128, and because of shrinking public resources, 250 billion to come in through innovative financing. Now, I just made this chart last night. This is how the share of the federal PSDP budget goes. 0.5% for education professional training, S&T 0.8%, 16.2% for national highways, roads, infrastructure, NTDC, PEPCO, the IDP, internally displaced versus rehabilitation, Kashmir, Gilgit, Baltistan, cabinet and finance divisions. So this is the way, the productive sectors, which can enhance the productive sectors, education, professional training, health, S&T, telecoms, do not get much. Water does because the dams are very high costly and they, of course, last a long time. Now, I was interested, I worked here for some years, and I was interested then, and I was very interested then. I learned a lot, unlearned a lot of things. How do you decide investments and allocations? Do you pick the area of the sector you want to develop? Question of overlaps, already mentioned by the earlier speakers. Reputations, monitoring issues, very nicely pointed out. Jurisdictions. And this finance versus planning commission jurisdictional fight has been going on for years. And still, some, let's say, national equilibrium has to emerge in this bit of game going on. Wrong costing values, impact, CDWP versus DDWP. Many times you only get buzzwords for excitation. Current fashion is for the knowledge economy, Internet of Things and AI and so on. But then competence in evaluation and monitoring, very nicely elaborated by General Shah. Then the federal provincial government, provincial love affair. This, so they do fall out of love sometimes. This happens. And CPEC is the latest complication. Now, news item ML1, I read in the papers 2 days ago. The ML1 rail project may be on a BOT basis. Going on. Yeah? Well, this is what has been suggested by the railways. They don't have the competence to handle this thing. Come on. Yeah? So, this is a kind of, Nowhere. Then of course, what I think what we need is, because all the time we don't need 5-10 year plans, but it helps foresight exercises, rightly pointed out in each ministry. They must know where they want to go, what they've learned, and then coordination, getting together to determine the need, value, and impact. Example, we talk about energy costs in exports. No, we do not make what the world wants. That's the issue. And of course, quality, the skills. Data from the Federal Bureau of Statistics, 34% of the workforce has less than 8 years of schooling, 44% has less than a year as illiterate. We cannot even maintain our infrastructure. The skilled technician is more valuable than a PhD, and we have not leveraged the CPEC BRI programs. Our young men are basically not employable. And we face a risk of rapid deindustrialization unless the government decides to be the agent of change. And I'm not in favor of, let's say, autocratic governments, but you need a change agent. And the government is the best available for this. I'll give you an example. Okay, here. Now, this is a very interesting paper, and this is by Bertucci and Spagat, 2002. Classes per capita GDP in dollars, and this is the ratio of students enrolled in vocational versus general education. And this is how it goes. Pakistan is here. Pakistan has got purchasing power here. We have very few people engaged in skills. And basically, this measures the degree of stratification of the society and the complex interaction between economic and political forces, aggregate income growth, wealth inequality, political participation. That article is worth reading. Low skills, low productivity, low expectations trap. How do we break out of this? But what are the facts? This is the figures in 2018, based on this, and from UNESCO. 44% illiterates. Turkey has only 1%, so literacy, reading and writing #1. Formal skills enrollment program is just 3%. It's 45% in Turkey, 30% in Iran, 23% in Malaysia. We have a university enrollment, I'm sorry, couldn't complete 1.6 million in Pakistan. Yet our total formal skills education program, formal enrollment, is just about 300,000, 330,000. It's like having a lot of doctors but no nurses. The same analogy. And look at what Ireland did over a period of just 30 years. In 1972, 50% of the workforce, the education level was primary, and then it fell over the years. And now it's 9%, and this is how it goes. So and Ireland is a very interesting economy, a pure agricultural economy, 1 or 2 crop economies, maybe lignite and so on. And then they brought in IT, they brought in other stuff, and manufacturing and high-end services. Now, this is the total actual numbers, and you can see what the numbers are in Egypt, in Turkey, where is Pakistan is here, Bangladesh is here, and so on. And again, same thing, but let me move on from here. Again, DFBS data. There's the same things I just put in a different form. How many are illiterate? How many are literate in the country? You know, and out of the people in different age group, only 16 million with less than 5 years, and less than 8 years total number. So we must aim for at least 30% enrollment, which is certifiable and recognized internationally. This will encourage inclusive growth and productivity increase also. We also make people employable. This is the World Economic Forum 2018 report, Technological Readiness. As I said, technology is not a magic wand. And you can see this is the worst. We are here. And the best, what are they good in? Technology adoption by firm levels, we are pretty bad. And we are to 137 countries. For FDI technology transfer, Ireland. And look at India here. And then capacity for innovation, and so on. So we have talked about a technology century, but we're not ready for it. Now, I just quickly move through some things I picked up from the PSDP files, the website. Construction of University of Mines and Minerals is under process in Dokundi, 500 million. Hold on. You don't need mining engineers, there are so much as mining technicians and safety, mine safety. Why set up a university? This is what we are doing. Single department, which should be single departments in a university, are becoming universities in their own right. Should not happen. Now we love the word national. So these are all the various projects that happened in the recent past. Centers of excellence, national centers in big data, cloud computing, cyber security, automation, AI, GIS and space application technology, from all 17, 18. Institutes don't become national by calling them national. They grow and they evolve the right amount of people, breadth and depth of their activities. Then they become national, not by calling them national. Then there's an overlap. The NTRC is the National Transport Research Corporation. NTRC. NTRC. All their detailed projects, and I'll show them here the cost and dates. The project number 41 to 45 in the PSDP list. Look at the overlap. Accident data and cost study, actual load survey, ops research, origin destination survey and transport demand, permanent traffic count program, and now a new one which is under study of freight transport trucking in Pakistan in April 2000. So why these overlaps? Is it because they're under different departments, or because of TDWP they slip under the radar? These I remember because I was involved with them when I was here in the Planning Commission. Product Development Center for Composite Based Sports Goods in Sialkot was done 11, 12 years ago. They were not able to do it, and as rightly pointed out earlier, they didn't have the required managerial skills to do it. And now we have the same thing all over again in 2017. E-Office, I'm sorry, I'm just going to finish now. E-Office was done in 2006-07. Now what happened? In the Islamabad ministries and divisions, people still prefer to do it on paper, not on computers. So how do you change the mindset? But let's hope. So maybe, but reputation and monitoring problem with institutional memory. Now, but I love this particular project under process. Development of question data bank for tests examinations conducted by the Federal Public Service Commission. This is an ongoing project under process. Just imagine this. Now, I'll just very quickly show you what little things do. Pakistani rugged Pakistani tripods had 12 to 13% of the EU market in 2018. High-tech lasers exported to Malaysia, Bangladesh, Germany, Switzerland, some costing $230,000 each, and lasers and electronics production exceeds 28 billion. There are about 540 people here, more than nuclear physicists. I started this laser program, so I know how it's grown over the years. So stay in touch with them. And then this is the laser land leveler. Came out of the labs. Or 4,000 units sold in Pakistan, saves 31 to 57% of the water.
You used it.
You use it. And what you do is when you level it up, the laser beam starts spinning all around. Defines the horizontal plane 300 meters at 300 meters radius with this big. So you have a sensor, it's there, and if it hits lower, this means the land is high, cut it. If it's like this, fill it. So the blade can, this hydraulic system was made in the Atomic Energy Workshop. They got very good workshop. Then we, of course, give it to the market. And without changing anything, the yield goes up 16 to 18% because of uniform distribution of water and fertilizer. And then, of course, a CERN engineer of 40 laser systems installed there. Now, and I want to very quickly close by a great opportunity which has been before us for a few years, and we are doing nothing about it. Energy. Major industrial opportunity in the next few years. Its bill is $230 to $250 billion. Hardware, software, infrastructure. Some within existing capability. I estimate at least 20% can be done right now in Pakistan. Now we've not done any of this with any of the CPAP projects. A boiler is 22%, turbo generators, electricals, plant balance about 38. Yeah. And these are the kind of things, you see, which are done already available. Complete control rooms on nuclear power plants. Now this is more complicated than that for a thermal power plant. Then evaporators, 3 meters by 16 meters long, 50 tons. Turbine blade carriers, heat exchangers, coolers, so all this is available in the country and the whole downstream, upstream can be very good, but then you need a good metals industry also, metals, steel and aluminium alloys, or composites. And so lastly, I can't go without mentioning this, old science and technology in Pakistan. When I was honored to become fellow of the Pakistan Academy of Sciences. I had to give a lecture. I gave a talk on how do we know where we are. The modern GPS, you move your mobile phone, you know where you are, traffic and so on. And there is something by Kai Muhammad, his family was famous, 1634-35, this one was made. He was it's a tradition of the Ulugh Beg Observatory in Samarkand. It showed 50 stars, and unfortunately young people nowadays, even middle-aged people, don't know what a slide rule is like. So this one had a series of pens, and you could rotate, pen here, rotate, read off on the dial. Many things you could do. 50 stars, 120 locations from Central Asia to the Mediterranean, table of the planets at the back. It had mathematical scales of sine, cosine, and cotangent. All of this, 1634. But most interesting, it had a solar calendar. That is real entrepreneurship. It was meant for export. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shaukat Hamid Khan, for your informative presentation on how projects could be leveraged to create more jobs and what's holding back the job creation. You also covered issues around low skills compared with other peer countries and called for efforts to improve productivity in the country by addressing challenges of education and literacy.
Sir, if you permit me, I'd like to add, to face any future disaster, do you know one of the biggest agricultural plant, DNA Gene Bank, is just 10 kilometers from here at the Agricultural Research Center. It's got nearly about 40,000 accessions. And one set is buried up in the North Pole with the help of the, I think, Danish or Norwegian government, and one somewhere else. So just to preserve the plant DNA in case a disaster happens and the plant is wiped out.
Thank you. So let me now invite Mr. Shahid Sattar from Fatima for his remarks. He has no presentation, so he's going to give his thoughts from the presentations that have been so far made, plus his own experiential learning over the years.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. I'd like to raise some fundamental questions. And the fundamental question is that does the PSDP truly reflect an allocation of resources according to the economic priorities that are to be set by the government? Because to my mind, it does not. Because back in the early 80s, large sections or sectors of the economy were taken out in the name of self-financing, and they were taken out of the entire scrutiny process. What do I mean by that? OGDC, PPL, and other state-owned companies were not required to submit PC1s or go through any process or evaluation by a third party. Later on in the 90s, what happened is that we started with the IPPs. What are the IPPs? IPPs are a replacement of the power projects that were earlier executed by WAPTA, and the country paid for them through a tariff taken from the people and the consumers. But now that section of the entire economy has been taken out and is not subject to the same sort of evaluation, nor is it part of any priority setup or priority set that the government has made or is going to make. So we need to decide that these are just two examples. I can give you dozens of examples that where the government is not following any appraisal mechanism or allocation mechanism for projects or investments. So PSDP is not, in my view, reflecting the true investments or the allocation of resources in Pakistan. So under these circumstances, are we going to stick to the old design, which was that the government will allocate the sectors of economies that they want to develop, and also authorize each and every project, or are they going to let the private sector handle the allocation and the projects as so forth? But a hybrid of the nature that has developed in Pakistan is not sustainable. So I think we need to go back and do some fundamental thinking on how to make the system whole, or let it be, or free it up. So my thought on this is that the huge setup that the planning division and the planning commission is, has been excluded from roughly 60% of the investment in Pakistan. So do we still continue with this, or should we shift to a completely different system? So these are the thoughts that I have, and I think what has happened as a result of these sectors of the economy shifting out of the government scrutiny or the formal scrutiny in the planning commission and the ministries has resulted in IPPs making profits of 70% in dollar terms per annum, and we as the country have guaranteed those contracts sovereign. So it is ultimately a sovereign debt, and every sovereign debt has to be either properly analyzed and entered into with eyes wide open, or there should be no guarantee. And if there is no guarantee, then market forces should decide. So these are very fundamental questions. And these fundamental questions, I think, have not been answered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shahid Sattar, for your brief remarks, where you kind of questioned whether PSDP today represents government or country priorities, and whether there needs to go back. We need to go back for a rethink of the whole process. So with those remarks by our distinguished panelists, let me open it up for questions, observations, and remarks. What I'd like to see is the forward look. I know we all are good at the retrospective, because it's easy to look back and say this didn't work, that didn't work. But now we are in the 2020s. Probably this is a remarkable decade for not only Pakistan, for the world as a whole. And as we head to 2030, that's when SDGs need to be realized, and every country, including Pakistan, has signed up. Pakistan didn't do well in MDGs, so we have 10 years here now to catch up. So a forward look is what I would like to kind of see the conversation. I see a mix of very experienced people and a lot of young people. So let's try to bring that forward perspective, and let's have a debate around it, and let me open it up. Please identify yourself and the organization you represent. Thank you very much.
This is Engineer Mansoor Malik. I set up the Institute of GIS and Remote Sensing in the NAS New Campus in 2003. So we are more than 17 years old in terms of bringing GIS technology to Pakistan. So my question to General Shahid Niaz is, Project went fine, talk about capacity. Where is the technology? We can give you a mobile app in monitoring minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, progress of large infrastructures like Islamabad International Airport. So either the planning commission had gone to sleep, or something. So now technology is available in your palm. So I might as well give this input. Please, in future, use GIS technologies. This is what the chairman has just pointed out. You can multiply your capacities of your evaluation, monitoring and planning commission. So that's my intake into lack of capacity at planning commission for monitoring and evaluation of a large project like International Islamabad Airport.
Thank you very much. So that's a very useful intervention where he brings out the fact that technology can be a big driver for ensuring project level efficiency. I'd like to see whether anyone else has any similar thoughts on technology and digitization that can help planning commission revolutionize the way public sector development planning is done in Pakistan. Any other thoughts on digitization? Yes, please.
I think the whole process of project formulation, project implementation, that has not been scrutinized from a digital lens up till now, and now that we are talking of improving the efficiency of public expenditure, one of the main recommendations would be to use the latest available data analytics and also harness maybe even AI, artificial intelligence, and learn how to implement projects better. There's a lot of knowledge out there, and maybe we need to revamp the whole PC1 to PC5 system, make it short, make it more crisp, make it more user friendly, as because there's another side to it that I think it has not been revisited for the past so many years, and the user friendliness of the whole system could be a big problem in itself also. So let's not just put the whole blame on the way the projects are implemented, but the requirements for project implementation, they need to be updated and modernized as well.
Thank you very much for that. My understanding is that the PC1 process was digitized 10 years ago and is still awaiting rollout. So I think a lot can be done to roll that out, and which will also help one to move out of the red tape and the paper culture that is prevalent, which also creates multiple touch points and engagements. Therefore, decision that can be made in a few weeks gets taken in few months, largely because a letter has to be written to a province and the province has to respond to the letter, and then that letter has to be responded back, and then that letter gets another response. That process itself takes 2 to 3 months. I think this whole thing, as you said, could be minimized and done in an hour if it's all digitized. So I think one of the important things going forward is let's try to roll out this digitization process that was completed almost 10 years ago. Please.
I would just like to comment on this and what is being. I am Zahir Shah, I'm member implementation and monitoring at Planning Commission, and I've been here for the last few months here. I think the point which was highlighted of the use of technology, I think we are very much aware of this from this year, because what we are going to do is that all the projects, it was highlighted there are a lot of gaps in the overall project management cycle. I think what I have observed that we take too less time to diligence and put the projects to implementation, which is the main cause of cost and the time over. And the second aspect, our decisions are made most of the time not on really very good feasibility in the data, which is very accurate, or which you can call it a good scientific analysis. But I think from this year, as far as from the monitoring and evaluation point of view, I would like to apprise all participants. There are a lot of things are there in mind which have already been agreed. First is that we have an exclusive project director for each of the projects. So we have given a refreshed, this kind of directive which was already issued by the Planning Commission, that for each of the project there has to be an exclusive professional and of the project from start to the end. Second is that the project director is going to report digitally. So there is a project monitoring and evaluation system, which is a digital, you can call it a digital portal which is online, in which each of the project director will have access and he will report. And the sponsoring ministry will quarterly verify that report or consented that it is being, whatever funds are released, they're released from the ministry, and they are further utilized. And it is absolutely, I think it's right that, there's no culture or there was nothing of PC4, which is very important. Because in the project, if you look at it, it is not the formulation. We must monitor it effectively during the implementation. And on completion, we must evaluate it. But I think we are now going to have an evaluation, sort of evaluation kind of setup, which is going to either do it themselves or hire professionals from the market. And then your feedback to the systems, as it was highlighted also by the participant. So I think a few things are going on. We are also using this as far as the space technology is concerned. We're engaged with Spark. So they give us that kind of imagery which you were. They are the project of K4 project, which supplies water to the drinking water supply scheme. So we analyzed it. We could see that in 124 kilometers, how much is made, what is on ground, what are the resources mobilized. So we are going in different, and besides this, we are going to have Android applications which the monitoring team will use. So you will have a form system of reporting, a very objective, not that sketchy long reports which we have, right? And they do not have, sort of that content. Besides, we will add analytics to that because we have a lot of data, but we analyze it how we want to look at that data which is reported to us. Thank you.
Thank you for reassuring everyone that the Planning Commission is moving in the direction of scaling up quickly on technology, which is welcome. I think that will help not only efficient project planning and implementation, which on the average today takes about 18 months in Pakistan. So how do you shorten that? And second also, how do you have real-time data that will give you the needed evidence to make the changes that every project needs during implementation? You made a point about project director. From our experience, that's a big challenge in Pakistan. Our entire portfolio of projects in Pakistan, which is around 48 at this point of time, the average stint of a project director is 9 months. Okay, this is across the country, federal or provinces. So what happens is every time there is a new project director, then we have to then start looking at reintroduction of the project principles. But what is worse is also some of the ministries in the federal government and provinces is the quick. Okay, we have a project I won't name the project. In 18 months, it had 6 secretaries. Okay, and this is not in any way helping us in adequate or satisfactory project implementation. So I just wanted to put in these two numbers as markers. So I know you had a question or observation. Please go ahead.
Okay. So I've been associated with Punjab Information Technology.
Please introduce yourself.
I'm Hafiz Rahman Hati, and I've recently moved back after doing my MA from UK. I've been associated with Punjab Information Technology, where we've been trying to intervene through technological interventions. We did kind of do a couple of things with the dengue fever outbreak. We introduced the GIS systems. We coordinated with the district authorities and all of that, and that did help. But unfortunately, after two to 3 years, all of that process that went, that a lot of effort went into making and all of that, that system has gone down to doldrums. And it's not like whatever mechanism we had developed, after 2.5 years that had gone, like no one is using that. So that's kind of technological interventions. We do not have the sustainability of these practices. I did have the experience of writing one project, PC1. I was young and naive. It took me 3 years back and forth to write that and get it approved. And in that very process, we had 5 different secretaries, and that since it took more than 3.5 years to get the project passed, by the time it finally came into being, the project director's tenure of like around 3 years had already was completed, and it like took him 3 months to go away from that project, and then no wonder that project is still in the process. And also we've been trying to do the office we had been doing the office automation system. It is called the FOAS that PIDE did, and did actually pitch to the Planning and Development Board. I vividly remember the Chairman Planning Commission was the secretary of that Planning PND board in Punjab, but it's still in process, and only one hospital has taken that on board. So I see that's kind of all of these. This sustainability is very important. Secondly, very quickly, my one-liner is how these, to the Mr. Shahid Sattar, how do you think that the capacity payments and all of these, the factors that have kind of slipped away from the jurisdiction of PSDP, how do you think that these capacity payments and all of these are incapacitating the entire economic power of our country? How do you think we mean the Planning Commission or the PSDP can actually reclaim its jurisdiction over those projects or over those processes? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let me turn to the panelists to see whether you would like to respond to this question, any other questions. Yes. Please keep it brief, 2 minutes per response.
Addressing your particular concern about capacity payments, this winter we were using about 8,000 megawatts of electricity, whereas we had 32,000 installed. So in effect, we were paying for 32,000 capacity payments and just utilizing 1/4 of those. And the total amount of capacity payments in this current year exceeds 900 billion rupees. These capacity payments just cannot be covered. You cannot reclaim these projects or these processes anymore. Far too much water has flown under the bridge. However, what can be done and what should be done is that the Ministry of Power should get some decent tariff design consultants who should give them a tariff which allows more people to use the electricity so that the hit that of capacity payments is spread out to a lower number, and they recover more of it. What they are doing instead is just adding on the cost to the tariff and thereby reducing the number of people using electricity, and it's a vicious circle which is driving it up and up and up. Secondly, there's something known as stranded costs. These are costs that have been incurred, which do not have a justification anymore. The problem is that the state has entered into those contracts without the scrutiny that was required, and now we are faced with a situation that either our industry, our people, they all go out of business, or we take a decision that these are bad contracts and bad developments, and these have to be written off in some manner or other. Because if you keep on increasing tariff, there will come a time when neither I as a person can afford that tariff, nor the industry can manufacture and export. So we do have some hard decisions to take.
Yes, thank you very much. By the way, Pakistan has the highest cost of power generation in South Asia. So it has to come down, and this is largely because of, as you say, legacy IPPs and capacity payments.
The World Bank was initiated with the HUBCO project.
Yeah, we did it, yes. But we will change as well. So we take our share of responsibility. Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to add a few things here. pathway. This was the first winter where the government went for lower tariff. The peak and off-peak was the same, so there was no daily change, and the cost was substantially lower. It was not advertised. Okay, the whole intent was so that it was 11,000 megawatts. Peak power used in winters this year was 11,000, which is roughly half of summer. And the government tried to reduce they actually did reduce the tariff. So this, peak and trough could balance out. It's called peak shaving. They did it, but I don't know why the public didn't realize, or it was not advertised properly. This needs to be considered. Secondly, before these IPPs came into being substantially, there was a lot of power outage. And Shahid Sattar Sahab, I'd like to ask you one question. The trade industry was saying the power was given to us, we'll multiply the exports by what, 500 times? We'll make it $1 trillion exports and everything. The power came back in the system. There's no export. Unfortunately, the dollar.
Excuse me, एक minute. Shahid, sir, I'll request you, we'll do a power sector energy thing a little later. Abhi, let's focus on the PSDP. Power का हम करेंगे इंशाल्लाह conference.
Okay, you had a question.
I just have one question for General Saab. In your presentation, you had mentioned that there is a subscribed document available as far as the project planning and its implementation is concerned. My question is, what were the assumptions that went into its preparation long time back? Level of education, level of manpower available, level of expertise available, level of capacity available. If those are not there, then don't you think it is time to revisit that and make it more user-friendly as somebody has suggested over here? Thank you.
Sir, I fully agree with you that the need to revisit it, and I think it's a basic document. At least it gives you some guidelines. If there's a improvement required, it must be undertaken. Then I'll come on to the GIS point raised about the latest technology for monitoring, etc. My colleague Darsha also alluded to that. We have the system of PMES instituted long time back in the Planning Commission. I think there's a need to upgrade it, one. And secondly is the response from ministries. That is the break. It doesn't happen. Just to quote, because I was the engineer-in-chief, General Kiani was my boss, he was the chief of army staff. He was obsessed with digitization, high-tech. This was his own view. So, in a couple of months, he said we will have to environment, a new hospital management system, ordinary and database. And it happened. What he would personally do is he'll send a message to me in the morning. And I had to reply it within a couple of hours. Next day, if I don't, I'll get a call from him. So my whole staff was on toes. So this is what could happen. It is the Planning Commission, which is the lead ministry for coordination. It is to take the role of that lead in collaboration with IT or other ministries. About one more thing about the project directors, this point came up. This is a very sore issue. And the chairman very rightly said, what is the stay of a project director? Process and a procedure. Define. Once you select a project director, what qualification does he got to have? Which type of project is that? And the monitoring sits on that committee. It is done and the parent ministry. You pick up a person from the market, pay him the market rate, and you can't give this responsibility as on ad hoc basis to an additional secretary or anybody else, government official. So if these things are implemented, things will improve. Thank you.
Would you like to please
his response.
Let me, it seems to be all doom and gloom. But that's
Switch on the microphone.
that is not true. Give you an example. Agriculture and GIS that you mentioned. So Suparco came up with the project, and I was a member here in the Planning Commission, and I thought I could get something out of them. And what the something was that there was a discussion, debate in the Planning Commission, what will be the price fixed for wheat or for cotton, but then the question was, how do we know how much wheat is going to be produced and how much cotton is going to be produced? So I requested Suparco, can you please do a survey from space? So they picked 5 districts in northern Sindh, 5 in southern Punjab, observed things from space, from planting to germination to growing to full value of the crops, and had them monitored on the patwaris and Kanungos and others. So, and within 2-3% we knew how much wheat crop was going to come. So we knew what price to sell. That's one good example. But now some other bad examples. And this has to do with multiplicity of actors. The Pindi Islamabad metro cost about 45 billion rupees, executed in less than 2 years. The annual budget of Rawalpindi division school budget is less than 4 billion rupees. So priorities is my question. And how do you do what the promise was to do? And we know it wasn't worth 45 billion. So project formulation, how and why? Just one other thing here before I close. There's a lot of R&D going on, good innovations, but IP rights, people are not familiar. If they are familiar, they don't do it. So intellectual property should be protected, and people should be encouraged to file patents and whatnot. But stay away from the pharmaceutical sector, because the multinationals want what they call more or less a permanent, indefinite, infinite patent. They call it date exclusivity, and it's like a permanent patent. The whole purpose of a patent is you get protection for the inventor for the first 3-4 years, 5 years maybe, but then this encourages innovation and improvements comes in. It doesn't happen if the patent is there for 20 years or 30 years or 40 years. Just share something else with you, that's a good thing. Sorry, I'm taking somebody's time, but according to the clock, we still have 12 minutes. Yeah. We talk of medicine and so on, and health. We have a hospital here called Nori Oncology, and it came to the attention of people in Islamabad that Sudan had a similar accelerator, linear accelerator for therapy, cancer therapy in their hospital in Khartoum. It wasn't working, and they were going to buy a new one for about £500,000 or something, or maybe more. So what happened was that arrangements were made for the two to connect. Same model was here. And what it turned out was that the original technicians in Sudan had retired. They hadn't bothered or deliberately not taught the younger people what to do. So a video conference lasting about 2 hours, the system was shut down, restarted, voila, it worked. And simple, very simple, nothing was wrong with it. About solar energy, I think we will discuss later about solar homes. Through the Alternate Energy Development Board, I think it was 2006, 54,000 homes were solarized in Sindh and Balochistan. And there was a provision there that there will be technicians to maintain them for a certain area, how many number of technicians. The technician part wasn't done. The solar panels were involved. You could have them for light, and in each village a solar tube well pumped to pump the water out and so on. And within 3 years or so, I understand most of the things disappeared. They weren't stolen, so they probably sold off. So this is a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have about 10 minutes or 7 minutes. We probably can take another 2 or 3 questions or reactions, and then I'll turn it back to the panelists before I conclude. Yes.
Okay, I'm Dr. Saima Bashir from PIDE. I will agree with Dr. Shokat Saab. Recently, I came across an Australian immigrant specialist, and he said that we got visas for the trained nurses. So you were talking about transnational skills, and he said that we could not find enough nurses, trained nurses, because one of the requirement of that they could speak fairly well English. So even if we do have some nurses available trained, we could not send them because they could not, they were not eligible for the visa because they could not speak English at all. Second, I agree with you that the priority areas are not set up, and one of the prime example is the HEC. So HEC started giving PhD scholarships without setting the priority areas where we need the expertise. So initially they started giving like PhD scholarships to anybody who got the 50% GRE score. And lately, no wonder we can see that 40% of our graduates are unemployed. Most of the graduates who came back, they were trying to get a job in the university, but academia is already saturated, and they don't have enough expertise, and there is no like technology and innovation institutions and research institutions where we can saturate them. So these were my thoughts on this.
I'll just quickly comment on this.
Can just
The OECD and the USA, they did a study about 8-10 years ago, and they, to incentivize completion of education, people must know, let's say 10 years education, 12 years, that they'll get a job. And so this is why introduce a technical vocational subject in school during the last 2 years, and there's a greater chance. Now here at O and A levels in Pakistan, I hope that the British are sitting here, there's an alternative to practicals. They can't do this in their own country. Here they do this. No practicals for the science subjects in O and A levels. You see what it is? So there are a lot of little things to be done, sorted out.
Thank you. You have a second observation.
Yes, your remark about SDGs prompted that. There is an SDG federal unit housed in this very building, and also there are provincial SDG units. My question is, since we are discussing the PSDP since the morning, is there any exercise at the Planning Commission to see how the PSDP portfolio is aligned with SDG goals and targets? Because they're not going to be fulfilled, you know, just out of just wishing it away. There has to be a particular focus.
I can briefly comment on this, that I had a meeting myself, you see, from different perspective that, you know, once we do the monitoring, what kind of indicators we should monitor so that we could really evaluate how it is contributing to which, you know, but it's a humongous task, I would say. Now it's a very initial stage. But I think in few months' time, we would have a framework where it could be, you know, aligned.
So let me take the last question, or last observation before. Yes, please come closer so you can speak.
I'm Mahmood Khalid from PIDE. My question regards with the multi-level government's role. So in that regard, do you think that going in future, the spatial planning and developing certain standards and norms for the PSDP as well as the service delivery would really help? For example, just building a school would not solve the problem unless we know the number of enrollments, what is needed and how they're going to move into the future. So developing such a technological platform in which the institutions such as finance, planning, and the lower governments are involved, as well as having certain parameters in the system which can develop the costs for maintenance and operation without including.
Would anyone like to respond to that question? From the Planning Commission on setting standards?
I think I can just, because there is a section under member infrastructure which was looking at it, but it was not exactly like this, but basically looking at the whole territory of Pakistan and, you know, using it digitally so that, you know, all the kind of infrastructure, for example, if it's a health sector, so we put different kind of hospitals in that, we put kind of doctors, kind of load. Similar, it was with respect to education. But you know, it is a kind of project in which few they are going to get help from Punjab Urban Unit also, because they have worked a lot, I think, in few sectors there. So basically, it is a kind of concept in which we had a meeting with Survey Pakistan also, and with the Bureau of Statistics also in this regard. As is established in other, I think in developing countries, we call it National Special Data Infrastructure. Because in which you see, this is the point which I just referred to once I was giving my initial comments, that our basic data is not accurate, or its reliability, or accessibility. So for planning, first of all, most important to write the right information. But if you just use a whimsical information or without good evidence that this is the data which should be referred to. But I agree to that point. But what I want to highlight is that presently we are considering it that, and very soon we would have a framework in which we would take, I would say, a few years to really develop a very good comprehensive data infrastructure where planning could refer, and it could be with the integration or input from various stakeholders, including the provincial governments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you had the last.
Just a small comment. I may be wrong, but I do believe that the certain things belong exclusively to the state, at the federal level, provincial, local level. Education, health, security under law. These three things are the responsibility of the state. Otherwise, we'll have the East India Company all over again. Number one. Number two, health, for example, education has been discussed a lot. When I was here, then I interacted a lot, learnt a lot, and unlearnt a lot. There was Dr. Musaddiq at the PIDE General Hospital, and we discussed rural health services in the rural areas, peri-urban areas. And so after a lot of discussion, the programs came up, no cost to the government. The 6th year medical students have to spend a year in a hospital. So they made it compulsory for 3 months to go and work in a BHU. They took the BHUs in Chikwal, and male and female doctors both went. It had a remarkable impact on, let's say, reducing the burden on secondary and tertiary hospitals. It can be done. Another thing where I failed miserably, because one of the things that Planning Commission should also be doing is encourage certain activities if it hasn't been thought of. So the Bhagalpur Zakaria University came to us with some upgradation facilities and so on. And normally I was regarded as a very stingy person. But I said, I will recommend 5 million rupees more. Then why? You're sitting right next to the treasure, which is the documents going back 1,000 years in the Amir of Bhagalpur's house. And they need to be preserved, digitized, translated. Wonderful work for some social scientists in universities. So they got excited. And later on, I had left in 2008, I inquired and so on in the Nawab of Bhagalpur. He said, "You the pari chori ho gayi zindagi koi. Chori ho gayi, you take it." So, all gone.
Thank you very much. Let me first begin by thanking our panelists for their thought-provoking views and doing a retrospective of what has worked and what has not worked in Pakistan in the planning process, so that going forward the overall public investment planning process could be further strengthened. I'd like to thank the audience for your questions as well as comments and remarks. They were useful in sort of framing the debate and discussion, and also will be very useful for Dr. Nadimul Haq and his team as they kind of take forward the framework for economic growth, the publication that PIDE came up with recently, where they're looking to provide 8%, for which investment to GDP and savings to GDP would need to double. So these are great ideas. If I have to look at on the specific suggestions and recommendations, there were a broad set of ideas on technology and digitization and how they could be made sustainable based on what PIDE has done in Punjab. The second is the alignment between what's country and government priorities and what gets into the PSDP. How do you make that better? And the last point that was made around better data leading to sharp analytics, leading to more informed evidence that will translate into actions in the PSDP. Then finally, there was the whole suggestion around time has come to revisit the assumptions that were in place for the original PC1 process, and how it can be now an urgent need for updating. And finally, given that this is the beginning of the 20s towards the 30s of achieving the SDGs, more needs to be done, especially the alignment between the priorities as well as and the PSD and the SDG need to take place. So once again, thank you very much. But I'll leave one thought with Dr. Nadimul Haq, please. I know it's always in your mind. I'd like to see more women and young people in the panels going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.